Quotation marks. Quotation marks, also known as quotes, are punctuation marks used to indicate the beginning and end of a quotation or a direct speech. They can be either double or single marks. They are used to set off a direct quotation or a piece of dialogue from a written or spoken text. The text that appears within the quotation marks is considered to be verbatim, word for word, from the original source. There are a few different ways that quotation marks can be used in written text. Some of the most common uses include: 1. Direct quotations. When repeating the exact words spoken or written by someone else, use quotation marks to indicate that the words are being quoted verbatim. For example, the teacher said, "Please turn to page 42 in your textbooks." 2. Dialogue. In creative writing, quotation marks are used to indicate when a character is speaking. For example, "I'm not sure what to do," said John. 3. Titles. Quotation marks are often used to indicate the titles of shorter works such as articles, essays, short stories, poems, and songs. For example, "The Road Not Taken" is a famous poem by Robert Frost. 4. Nicknames. If a nickname is used in place of a proper name, put it in quotation marks. For example, "The Great Gatsby" is a novel by F. Scott Fitzgerald. 5. Words used as words. It is used when someone is discussing a word rather than using it normally. For example, "The definition of irony is the opposite of what is expected." 6. Informal usage. When express sarcasm or irony, it will be used informally. It is important to note that the placement of quotation marks and punctuation marks within a sentence can vary depending on the style guide being used, such as MLA or APA. Commas with direct quotes. When using direct quotes, commas are used to separate the quoted text from the rest of the sentence. The placement of the commas depends on the context of the sentence and the style guide being used. Commas separate explanatory text, such as "he said" or "she wrote," from the words inside quotation marks. 1. If the explanatory text comes before the direct quote, the comma follows it. 2. If the explanatory text interrupts the direct quote and neither part of the quote is a complete sentence, then the explanatory text is set off with 2 commas. The first comma follows the final word of the first part of the quote. It stays inside the closing quotation mark. The second comma follows the explanatory text. 3. If the explanatory text comes after the direct quote, the comma follows the final word of the quote. It remains inside the closing quotation mark. Number 1. If the quoted text comes after the introductory or explanatory phrase, the comma is placed at the end of the introductory phrase and before the beginning quotation mark. For example, according to the author, "The world is becoming a more connected place." 2. If the quoted text comes before the introductory phrase, the comma is placed after the quotation mark and before the introductory phrase. For example, "The world is becoming a more connected place, according to the author." 3. If the quoted text is part of a larger sentence and is not introduced by an introductory phrase, commas may be used both before and after the quoted text. For example, "The world is becoming a more connected place," he said, "but we still have a long way to go." If a question is being quoted, the question mark replaces the comma. For example, he asked, "How are you?" Here are the examples from my previous slides again, to double-check where the commas were used. 1. According to the author, "The world is becoming a more connected place." Can you explain where was the comma used? 2. The world is becoming a more connected place, according to the author. Can you explain where was the comma used? 3. The world is becoming a more connected place, he said, but we still have a long way to go. Can you explain where was the comma used? 4. He asked, "How are you?" Can you explain where was the comma used? In these examples, you can see how the commas are used to separate the quoted text from the rest of the sentence, depending on where the quoted text is placed in relation to the rest of the sentence. Thank you.